Welcome to Full Scope, a podcast of two guys in their 20s, giving their perspective on the games that we love and the story behind it all. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, along with my counterpart. My counterpart, Sarah Morris, was not able to be here tonight, but I'm joined again by a special guest, Micah Mcdonald, a former college and high school classmate of mine. Thanks for being on again.
Hey, thanks for inviting me here again. I love being on this podcast, man.
Yeah, man, thanks. Well, to start things off, Duke had a narrow loss to Michigan State yesterday. Michigan State was able to kind of like go on a 12-0 run after Duke led by 9, and this is the second straight year Duke's going out in the Elite Eight, and they haven't made it to the Final Four since 2015. And Zion obviously was an all-timer, average 26 points on 61% shooting and 8.5 rebounds, and had an amazing stat line for the entire tournament. And
Right.
one of the interesting things though was kind of like almost like a foreshadowing of the Maui Invitational game against Gonzaga, where RJ Barrett, he kind of tries to take over near the end and they come up short. It was almost like deja vu with against Michigan State. And this was a type of team where they could match Duke's physicality. Cassius Winston had an incredible game, only with one turnover. But with all this expectations for Duke and them coming up short, and how Michigan State was able to match their physicality, what were your overall thoughts on
Well, first of all, I don't think it should be a surprise that Duke didn't. Maybe to the Final Four, it's a shocker, but
it? Right.
definitely winning the national championship. And here's why: because it's a rare thing to see one and done type teams win
Finish it.
championships.
Yeah.
The past 3 years, you've had two Villanova championships and one UNC championships, and what those two teams do is they groom players, and you see a lot of so you see a lot of upperclassmen um, because they have experience in there. So what happens with R.J. Barrett and with Zion Williamson and with
Cam Reddish.
Trey Jones is and Cam Reddish and all these players, these freshmen that come in, they have no experience. So when it comes to a close game situation and RJ Barrett decides I'm going to take over, he has no other way to think back. Okay, what did I do last tournament? Why? Because there was no last tournament. Because they are so inexperienced. When this group of one and done teams, a team such as Kentucky as well, and why they haven't won in a long time, and and it's not as frequent, is because the chemistry isn't there. Now Duke for a freshman class that they have has surprisingly great chemistry, but when you go up against teams such as Michigan State, who with all their problems this season, having Joshua Langford injured, um, and nobody thought they would get to this point, but you see veterans coming up and stepping up because they say, "Hey, we've been here before. We
Right.
know what we need to do to get past." But this is total new territory for one of them teams, and they don't have that um, star caliber player that has stayed that can groom them in that process, and that's why I think it's not a surprise. While Duke has been mostly the number one consensus team in the league this year, and even throughout the tournament, despite having close calls since week one of the tournament, they are still projected number one seed because they have such highly touted players, but they have no experience going in. And so I don't think it's a surprise that they didn't get to the championship game and in conclusion didn't win it because of the lack of any experience that they have.
Yeah, and my thing, you kind of went straight to it. Um, with Kentucky losing and Duke losing, my thoughts were that one and done teams are just, there's been a recent just track record of them just not being able to get it done. With
Right.
PJ Washington, I thought with Kentucky, like when PJ Washington's there, they're a top 5 team. Without him,
Mm-hmm.
they're not as elite and in that
They're
top
not
tier.
at all. You
Yeah,
see just how much of a transformative player uh, PJ Washington has been, and when he's not playing, when he is, it's two totally different teams. One is a championship contender, and one is a mediocre SEC team. And it's
yeah,
such a difference to see PJ Washington do what he does.
yeah, definitely. And one of the players who was, I feel as though was pretty much their best 3 point, their best perimeter shooter. and had the knee injury before the last game against Virginia Tech. Cam Reddish,
Mm-hmm.
he only had 8 points on 2 of 8 shooting and 2 turnovers. And Duke overall, I mean, number 25 in 3-point attempts and number
Yep.
328 in the country for 3-point percentage. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
not a team that is an elite shooting team at all.
Not
And
at all.
it's an over reliance on Zion and RJ Barrett because they're so elite at the paint in the paint that they really didn't even need to kind of concern themselves with the perimeter shooting. But with Cam Reddish and how he wasn't able to be the consistent, third impact player, like how much of that do you think was also a big impact as well?
I think it is a big impact, but if we look at the way the media talks have been since the beginning, or them committing together and having these top three talents of the top of the last class come together, and Cam Reddish has always been overshadowed, always. No matter if RJ Barrett or Zion Williamson didn't play a game and he stepped up, when he hit that shot versus Florida State, he was still overshadowed. And so now we come to a point in the season in this tournament where Zion and RJ showed up, but Cam didn't, and now Cam gets the blame for it.
Yeah.
And so I understand where they're coming from. For me, I've been consistent. I think Cam Reddish is a very undervalued talent, even as a number three player in this draft class, because of the freak human nature of Zion Williamson and of the stellar IQ play of RJ Barrett. But it is on Cam Reddish that he didn't perform. But also we don't know um, if he was still playing with the injury. We don't know the uh, the emotional, we don't know the psychological effects
Right.
that it had on him, especially in a place where he's putting added pressure on himself to be out on the court because it is the NCAA tournament. And so, but again, this is at a place where, I mean, yes, you have the coaching staff to help him out, but you don't have a player out there who has been through this, who is a star player on the team, who's been in a tournament and injured before. And so they can't really help him through. Like, okay, this is the mindset you need to have, and yeah, you need to take certain precautions, but this is what you really need to be looking out for. And so there's this undue pressure on him, even as an underrated player on that team, um, to excel, and maybe that just got to him. But he definitely should have been performed better. There's no reason that he should have just scored 8 points.
Hmm.
Um, but again, we don't know the injuries that he still had. Maybe we don't know the psychological effects that it had on him. But that's still no excuse for him um, to only score 8 points. But um, I think the media coming down on Cam Reddish. I mean, you got to be consistent.
Yeah.
You got to give him props where he gives him props and keep him in his light. But being undershadowed by Zion and RJ, it's hard being Cam Reddish. And so even then, as an undervalued talent, even as still a top 10 talent for the draft. Um, he's putting added pressure on himself to be as best as he can because he is undervalued, and I think that is a factor that not a lot of people think into.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I mean, Zion, he's been the biggest draw in terms of this season and, in all time in terms of his, his physical prowess. And, we felt as though, okay, yeah, he's definitely going to be gone after this year. But there was the report from Adrian Wojnarowski that he's strongly considering returning. And
Hmm.
and he didn't take the loss to Michigan State lightly. And I don't know
Of
if,
course not.
yeah, obviously. I mean, this guy is, when he could have just sat out after that horrific, scare in terms of the injury. Um,
Yeah,
he just had no intentions of doing it. He was like, I'm sorry you guys thought that, but that's not even something I'm considering. Like, I'm coming back and playing with my teammates, and that's just the type of guy that he is. Like Savon has mentioned multiple times of how much he loves just the competitor that he is,
of
and
course.
the fact that he's not thinking about the things down the road. But in terms of whether or not you think he'll stay, because obviously like the Knicks and teams like the Bulls and Suns are going to clamor after him. But
Yep.
what do you think about his potential of staying and the fact that we always felt like this was just a one and done year for him?
Um, I think it's the best thing for him to do. While he is a freak of nature, I mean, just look at his size. He's 285 pounds. So if he was in the league today and in the NBA, he nobody weighs more than him.
Right.
And Boban Marjanovic, who is a foot and a half taller than him, weighs less than him. But he's this freak who is a freakish athleticism, but his IQ is not there yet. His while he is a generational talent now, he is the most talented player in college basketball without a doubt. But he needs to hone his skills, and something that I've seen in him is is different than almost every single person that I've seen come through college basketball. Is that he does not care the pressures on him. Hey, you need to sit out. Don't play the rest of the season so you can improve your draft stock. Um, say this, say that. Don't say this. Focus on this. But he's like, no, I'm going to focus on right now and what I need to focus on. And so, if that is a strong indication of who he is, as he's a humble guy, he's a competitor. He wants to get his. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed. Even with the Bulls and the Knicks and all these people coming after him, it's like, hey, a lot of people would say the smart thing to do is take the money, like just take the money. Um, but I think what's on him, and it goes into how Zion will be remembered, is Zion is not the best player in Duke history. He's
Yeah,
not
no.
even in the top three. You have Christian Laettner, Jay
Grant
Williams,
Hill.
and Grant Hill, and even Shane Battier is in the conversation as well. And so,
I would put him ahead of Battier.
yeah, of course, but he's in the conversation.
Yeah.
I think he's the fourth best player in school history. But
Hmm.
this is the mark on the Duke program this year. They have 8 McDonald's All Americans on their teams, and they couldn't even get to a Final Four.
Yeah.
And three of them are, like, four of them are in the top 10 recruiting in that recruiting class. Ty or Trey Jones being the other one. And so, when you have that high of a talented team, and you can't get to a Final Four, you need to work on something. And so I think that's a mark on the Duke program of having that many good young players and still not getting anything done. Now they won the ACC tournament, sure, but they didn't win the regular season, and they didn't get to the Final Four appearance. And so this is a mark on them, and I think Zion is. I think it would be smart for Zion to stay. But Zion, generational talent, best player in college basketball, top 5 player in Duke history, and he could be an amazing player in the NBA even if he went. Um,
Yeah.
but
And it's a
he
measured
is
approach. It's a measured
right.
approach for him because just imagine like if Zion goes back goes to the draft, after
Mhm.
another year where he's even more seasoned with all of the,
Oh my
amazing
goodness,
physical attributes
yeah.
that he already has.
And let's go back to his stats. Okay, so he is the he is one of only 5 players, and it was originally 4, but there was actually another player from Belmont this year who did this, who averaged 20 points, 9 rebounds, and a 67.5 true shooting percentage in a season since 1992. Only 4 other players have done it, and that's including the other guy from Belmont this year. Um, and this is also crazy. So, in regards to let's talk about a PER. There's
Yeah.
nobody in the history of college basketball that has even scored higher than a 38 at PR. And Anthony
Wow.
Davis once led the nation at 35. Williams' PR was 41.6 this year. He
That's
obliterates
amazing.
DeMarcus Cousins. He obliterates Anthony Davis. He obliterates Frank Kaminsky and all those guys who had that player efficiency rating that was sky high. But
Hmm.
nobody before this season has scored over a 38, and he got a 41.6. This guy is insane. There's
Yeah.
nobody in the past 25 years that has averaged 20 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 steals in the contest. But Williams just fell short of that because he had 1.8 steals, and that was because of the game that he sat out, or the game that he got injured in North Carolina, because he didn't rack up any stats in that half minute he played, so it dropped him below the 2 steal mark. And so he would have gotten it if he didn't get injured. So he is the
Yeah.
closest, and nobody in the past 25 years has been able to do that. And if it weren't for the injury, he would have. So this guy is something like we have never seen, but he's still not the best, not even in his school history. And he's got a lot more to work on. And if you have anybody to sit under to do that, Coach K is the one to do that.
Hmm.
Look what he did with Jay Williams. Look what he did with Grant. Jay Williams was a Player of the Year, 2-time Coaches Player of the Year, an All American. He won the title in 01. And so these players that are better than him as greats in Duke, um, they've won championships. And so
Hmm.
I think if he wants to be on the other level, on the next level of Duke uh, glory and fame, he's got to stay and win a championship. And to me, I mean, I know it's the age of the one and done, and that's not going to go anytime soon. But if anybody were to forget the system, it would be Zion, and I respect Zion a whole lot for just how he's acted, how he's conducted himself this season. And I don't say that a lot about most people because they're young, they don't know what they're doing. But
Yeah.
Zion has got his head on his shoulders, and I think that bumps up his draft stock more than anything. His character, his passion, his drive, and then you tack on these generational stats that he's been able to have, and this is the makings of an all-time great player. But
Yeah.
the
And
smartest thing to do is stay. The smartest thing to do is stay, and I think he should.
And you were talking about before we started recording, you were talking about like some of the list of because you're a big UNC fan and some of the list of like
Right.
Duke players you kind of just despise. I feel like with Zion, like even though I mean, if you're a UNC fan, you obviously you vehemently root against Duke. This is still a
Right.
guy that you're like there's really nothing you can hate about him because he
Well,
does
I can
everything.
I can only hate one thing about him, and that's he chose Duke over UNC, even though his best friend went to or committed to UNC instead.
Exactly.
But but regards to that, like I mean, yeah, I was bitter about that, and I thought for sure we were gonna get Zion, but he went to Duke, and yes, I don't like Duke. I respect them, but I don't really care for Duke players. Not a lot that I respect. Um, Even some of the players in the NBA that I don't mind, such as Jason Tatum. Like I don't
Hmm.
mind him, but I don't really respect him either as a person. He was just a college basketball player. He's an NBA player. But Zion Williamson, I respect Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
He looks. He knows he has that freakish ability. He knows he has that freaking talent. But he has such a strong character that is uh, not really there for most people that have that high caliber of talent in college basketball. So I respect him with all the respect I can give a Duke person.
Yeah.
So, but he's gone above and beyond this year to not only show his ability, but to show his character and to show that nobody, like you can say all you want, but I'm going to do me and I'm going to get mine. And for a college basketball player a freshman who's jumping on this big stage and most people won't know how to act. He's doing it well, and
Yeah.
I applaud him for it.
Yeah, definitely. Transitioning to Virginia's overtime win against Purdue. I mean, one of the most dramatic, overtime wins you'll see with Diakite hitting the go-ahead jumper to tie
Mm-hmm.
it, and Clark, tips it down court him instead of heaving. Like Clark could have heaved it for the win, but it probably wouldn't have. Virginia probably would have been going home instead of
Right.
the smart IQ play to pass it. And Kyle Guy had 25 points. Jerome had 24, and um, Carson Edwards was just phenomenal. 42 points, 10 threes.
My goodness.
Um, I mean, I think the first player in the tournament with multiple games of nine plus 3-point made field goals. So it's just really astounding what he was just able to do, and 5 consecutive games with 25 plus points.
Of
Jerry West
course.
had the most with 8, but in terms of the late, in terms of the fact that I mean this was a game Purdue should have won, and Virginia was resilient, it was able to find a way to win. In terms of what you saw from Virginia and the fact that with their next matchup with Auburn, what did you see in their win, and also how do you foresee their road ahead in the tournament?
So the one difference is Kyle Guy finally was able to shoot the ball.
Yeah,
He hasn't been able to do that this whole postseason. Is Kyle Guy shot the ball. Another thing, nobody else on the Purdue team scored more than 7 points.
wow,
Ryan Klein, who had a breakout game the last game, only had 7. Eastern had 7. Harms had 6. Eifert had 0 points. He only shot once. The most bench points on the bench was Hunter, and he had 5. And so you see that contrasted with Virginia's team. Diakite had 14. Guy had 25. Hunter had 10. Jerome had 24. this was a much better, well-rounded team, and now we can see why Purdue lost 9 games this season. But Carson Edwards to get them to an overtime and literally single-handedly carried his team, scoring over half their points and over half of Virginia's points. This this guy is incredible,
Yeah.
and his offensive prowess is unlike anything I've ever seen in the past decade. Like he doesn't his team isn't that successful, but he's had to do it by himself.
Hmm.
Now Ryan Klein has stepped up, especially the last game when Purdue pulled out that win, which was shocking to me. But they pulled out that win, but he didn't show up this game. But Virginia, the better, well-rounded team. Do I think Virginia is going to win the national championship even with the remaining people? No, I do not. Um,
Do you
I
still
just don't
see
see it.
offensive? You still see offensive deficiencies with them because there are stretches where they just like
Yeah,
even the
I
Oregon game
mean,
where they just couldn't score.
and I like defense better than offense. Um, but yeah, they're inconsistent. They're inconsistent with their game, and if Kyle Guy continues to struggle, albeit that one game he didn't, um, I think they're lucky that they have to play Auburn. Now Auburn is an up and coming team that, um, I I mean,
Run and gun type team.
they almost lost in the first week
Yeah,
to
New
New
Mexico
Mexico
State.
State, and yeah, they won by 1 point to New Mexico State, 1 point. And then they beat Kansas by 14, beat North Carolina by 17, and beat Kentucky by 6. And so
How
they've
surprised
been
were you?
turning up. I mean,
How surprised were you like what were your thoughts on UNC's loss to Auburn?
what can you do when they hit 17 threes?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, nobody scores 97 points on North Carolina. 80
Ever.
is a good mark that we hit, but no, that shouldn't have happened. We have a better defensive team than that, and but I mean, look back into the conference tournament. Auburn beat Tennessee by 20,
Hmm.
and even in the game against UNC, Brown only scored 12 points. Okiki scored 20, and he was the main guy, uh, and it's an unfortunate incident that happened to him with that tearing of the ACL, and I give huge props to UNC for how sportsmanshiply they held that and supported Okiki in that effort. But their 3 point shots. McLemore 1 for 3, Okiki went 3 for 5, Dunbar 3 for 7, Brown 2 for 6, Pure 4 for 6, and Dowdy 2 for 3. And so they're hitting 3 pointers left and right, and we were 7 from 28 from the 3 point line. A guy
Wow.
in Cam Johnson who is a knockdown shooter from 3 point range went 2 for 7. Um, Kobe White went 0 for 7. And so the guys that we have depended on to carry us this season, especially in freshman Kobe White, who has just been carrying. He only had 15 points and he didn't make 1 3 out of 7 threes. And so I'm not surprised, but just looking at Auburn and the tear that they've been on, beating Tennessee twice this season,
Hmm.
twice, and the second time crushing them by 20 points. They didn't lose a game in March. Um, they struggled in February. They lost 3 games in February. One to Kentucky, one to unranked Ole Miss, and one to LSU. But they've finally come to form, and Bruce Pearl has done an amazing job in getting this team to where they are, even as a 9-loss team. And their offensive efficiency, granted without Okiki, um, I think is going to create problems for Virginia, who's spotty. Now, the strength of Virginia right now is their defense,
Yeah.
and with Okiki out, I think that's going to be a real bit of struggle. But when Okiki went down, I thought UK was going to handle him, and Macklemore stepped up, and Harper stepped up. If Harper and Brown did what they do to UK and have some help from the other guys, they were the only two that scored over 10 points in that game against Kentucky. But they need some other guys to step up, and Macklemore needs to step up as the person who replaced Okiki. But I think it'll be a close game. I do. Um,
So you
I
feel
think
as
it.
so with Virginia, like you kind of feel as though like Kyle Guy has to. I mean, he has to be have a really efficient shooting performance because if he's not, like, their hopes are very slim because that's like the main offensive generator. Even though I mean DeAndre Hunter will have his stretches and Ty Jerome, but Guy really has to be on for that type of performance, which
He
is seeing
has
right
to. He
now.
has to because up to this point they've played teams that they should beat,
Yeah,
and they won by 3 to an Oregon team who's really come to their form, and the Pac-12 tournament. Granted, is a weak conference this season and coming into the tournament. But Kyle Guy, he's got to perform if they want to win games against actually good teams now. I mean, you're going against an Auburn team that has ravaged since March, crushing top 10 teams, and uh, and they're playing. I think their biggest advantage is that Okiki's out, and
for
they got to play to that advantage. But also now Auburn has that win it for Okiki mentality. But even if they do, I don't see them getting past Michigan State or Texas Tech. I don't. Not even at Texas Tech. Texas Tech with the best defense in the league. I love Texas Tech's play. Um, and I mean, I picked them to win that region, just not only because of the defensive play, but now they're actually playing good offense, and it's
yeah,
scary. It's scary
Jared
what Beard
Culver.
has been able to do. Um, so it's not Virginia's year to me. I mean, they get lucky with an Auburn team, but even then, that's scary to them. But Kyle Guy definitely has to perform well if they want to continue in this tournament.
Yeah, definitely. And with Michigan State and Texas Tech, I mean, Michigan State, they're one of the most balanced teams in the country.
Mm,
With I mean, with Cassius Winston, the way he's able to control the game and just not make turnovers, make he doesn't have the physical attributes that like a star guard prospect that future
hmm
star guard prospect would have, but he has like just the intuitiveness and he's a leader. Like Winston
Of
is
course.
an amazing leader, and that was something that really um, was visible in the Duke game. And then Texas Tech, holding Michigan at 16 points
Oh my
at
goodness.
halftime, like a all time low for Michigan, and what they were able to do to them, and also at Spurs getting Gonzaga out of their offense. So in
Right.
this matchup, what are kind of like the big factors in this one, and who do you think is kind of like the like two of the most important players in this matchup?
Well, obviously, the most important player for Michigan State is Cassius Winston. The
Yeah,
most important player for Texas Tech is Jarrett Culver. Jarrett Culver, a three-star prospect coming into the season, is now to me a top 10 draft pick.
yeah,
And just what he's I mean he didn't even shoot well versus Gonzaga. He went 5 for 19 from the field and 2 for 8 from three-point line, but still in 19 points. So, um, this team is so different from the others. I mean, they've got 3 transfers, and most of their players weren't highly touted, but their defense and what coach Beard has been able to do this season with this team is absolutely incredible. Um, they're even at a 3 seed and underdog. Um, Obviously they too are very inexperienced, and that's the one thing that I thought would get them downfall with Michigan and Gonzaga. But I mean, they crushed a very volatile offense in Buffalo by 20 points. They held them to 58. Then they held Michigan to 44 points and crushed them by 19. And then they beat Gonzaga by 6. And so the difference is, can Cassius Winston um, do enough to overcome the best defense in America?
yeah,
And it'll be a testament to Cassius Winston and the rest of the team. Um, if they can get to the Final Four without Josh Langford, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, Xavier Tillman's been playing well. Matt McQuaid's been playing well. Goins has been playing well. And so, but for them, you really need everybody to be there. But it's scary to see Texas Tech, um, who's consistently been the best defense, but now their offense is doing really well, and it's at the perfect time to have your offense excel as they have been. Um, I mean, this is going to be a very, very fun matchup to watch. Um, an unexpected Michigan State team getting has potential to get to the Final Four when nobody thought they were really going to do anything this season, especially after the injury to
Hmm.
Langford, and then a Texas Tech team who people still think not really. I mean, it's Texas Tech, you know.
Who do
But
you
then
think was more overlooked? Because
Michigan State,
yeah, Michigan State, yeah,
and I don't care if they're a two seed or not. They had especially because of that rough patch that they had after Joshua Langford's injury.
yeah,
Um, Most people wrote them off. They weren't even in consideration for being a top 10 team or one of the teams, best teams in the country. Um, and they snuck in at a two seed. And even when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I mean, I get that they beat Michigan in the conference championship by 5. Um, but I think they're definitely the most overlooked because we've been talking about Texas Tech's defense all season. That's just an incredible defense, and Jarrett Culver really coming to form as a star in this league. Um, but we've always criticized Texas Tech's offense, but Texas Tech has been there. Michigan State hasn't, and that's a testament to Tom Izzo and the dedication that he's put in this team um, to put an unlikely Michigan State team into the Final Four, even as a two seed, or into the potential Final Four, even as a two seed.
yeah. And Xavier Tillman, he's been huge in terms of since Nick Ward, he's had a reduced role since the hairline fracture in his hand, and that's
Right.
been a big addition as well. So in terms of overall, like, do you like Michigan? Is Michigan State the team that you're liking most in terms of having the best chance to win it all now?
To win it all.
I mean, compare
Um,
because I know like Texas Tech, like if you had to do like a power ranking, like would Michigan State be one and like um Virginia or Texas Tech two?
um, I think I think I would say that. Yeah, I think Michigan State's number one, Virginia two, and Texas Tech's three.
Yeah,
But it's a battle for me for Virginia and Texas Tech. The reason Virginia is number two is because of the play of Kyle Guy, and then Auburn is just a scary team there, where they are. Um, but uh, I don't think it's that big of a difference between Michigan and Texas Tech. Like it's very narrow between those three schools, especially Michigan State and Texas Tech, because they are both unlikely teams. Um, we'll see if Texas Tech can live up to their defensive name. But we also see the coaching legend and Tom Izzo and the team that has really come to form and a good, with good recruits and everything that they've had this season. They have a better team in regards to talent and out of high school prospect and coaching. Um, but I mean, just the way the Texas Tech has played this, not only this year, but especially in the tournament, and how they've had their way with schools that you didn't think that could do, even as a three seed. Um, it's a very narrow margin, but yeah, I would put Michigan State as the best team right now, even with Virginia being in it.
yeah. Um, Transitioning to the NBA, OKC is they've been 3-7 in their last 10 games.
Yeah,
They've kind of had the worst post All Star break run, and now they're currently eighth in the West. San Antonio is seventh, and they're kind of deadlocked
yeah,
at a tie right now. And hey, me and Savon have been talking about it. We were talking about for the season whether the Spurs could make the postseason or not. This
yeah,
They
yeah,
just continue
yeah.
to find ways to do it. This is
My
just an
goodness,
organization that just. I mean, they're just going to be in for as ever long
I sure hope
as
so.
Pop is there. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
and go ahead.
yeah, that's great. I mean, the last time that we talked, I was talking about the question was, can San Antonio get to the playoffs even with the injury of Dejounte Murray and the trading of Kawhi? And I told you, I mean, I think we can, but I don't think we will.
Hmm.
And even coming up in the latter half of the season, we were up fifth. I mean, we're still only a game and a half out of fifth place, and that was so narrow right there. So I was like, wow, we're actually doing this. Like, and it's a testament. I told you last time we talked, if we do, it's a testament to how great Pop is. And even if they didn't get in, it wouldn't be a harmful thing for Pop. It shouldn't. I didn't think it should have
Wouldn't
been
hurt
a
their
slight
legacy at all. Yeah,
to Pop's legacy, but to get them in is a legacy. It's a legacy changer to have this team, um, um, just do what it has done and just stayed in it. Being 44-33 right now, and we're obviously locked in the playoff race, and um, if this is the year to be a 7 or 8 seed, I think in the West, um, with Golden State's struggles and Denver's inexperience. Um, I think if anybody were to go against Golden State this year, this would be the year to beat them. Now I think they're coming to form now, and they're starting to be good. But this has been a year of struggle for them. But well, going back to OKC, I mean, it seemed like only a
they're
couple
still a
weeks ago
top
they
10
were.
defensive team. You know,
Yeah,
but
it
but,
seemed
but
like
it's
only a
it's
couple
just
weeks ago they were fourth.
fourth or
You know,
yeah.
they were fourth or fifth, and they were locked in that spot, and now they're tied for seventh with us. And uh, I mean, uh, we can go to Russell Westbrook, historically bad 3-point shooting year,
Right.
one of the worst in league's history, and um, I mean they just lost to the Mavericks, and who don't really have much. I mean, they're not playing for anything, and Paul George, while he's had an incredible season, I don't understand why they are that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, with the loss to the Dallas, George had 27, Adams had 20, Westbrook had 25. Um, but unfortunately, that's really all they have. I mean, they have Jeremy Grant as a small forward uh and Ferguson as a shooting guard, but in their bench they really have Schroeder. I mean, they have Nerlens Noel, Markieff Morris, and Raymond Felton otherwise, but they don't have and Hamidou Diallo, but they don't have a strong bench. But with the volatility of their offense, I don't or their starting offense, I really don't understand what happened to them. Like
Yeah.
they were just being consistent even with Westbrook's historical back shooting year. Paul George was having his year, and I don't understand what happened.
This is the surprising thing because were they fifth last year in the West?
Uh, mm, that's a good question.
They may have been because I remember they played the Utah in the first round. I believe Utah was like maybe
Okay,
fourth.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's just interesting even without it as with all the issues that were with the big three like I saw this article where most NBA executives felt as though if they had just started off with George and Westbrook it would have been a lot better. And for most of the year that's how it looked like okay this was a massive upgrade they could get to the conference finals.
right.
Now they could be opening up with Golden State in the first round as the 8th seed. And that's not something any team even though Golden State doesn't want to see them in the first round that could be obviously an early elimination.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna get past the first round, especially with the teams they're playing.
Because either they're playing Golden State or Denver in the first round.
Yeah, I would I was thinking about this the other day for my team, and like I hope we get Denver.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
They're just
matchup for Denver.
and even I don't care if they're tied for the or they're now one game behind and they've been in the lead of the West all year. They're inexperienced,
Exactly.
and
Me and Savon were
so
talking
yeah,
about like what teams do we like feel as though are the most formidable foes for Golden State, and he felt as though he said OKC, but he also felt as though Denver's up there. But the reason I felt as though they weren't is none of those guys. I mean, outside of Paul Millsap, none of those guys really have experience, and they've never been there. Even though Nikola Jokic has is a top 4 MVP candidate, those
right.
guys have never been in that position before.
Yeah, I I with this Denver team, like I don't understand how they've been this good, and
Are you still so?
they just
Do you buy it?
I mean it would be crazy to say that I don't buy it even after a whole season of them being in the lead and doing what they've been able to do to teams. But as you saw 3 games ago, they got crushed by Houston,
Yeah.
absolutely crushed by Houston, and and So, I mean,
It's rare to see a second seed in the West,
yeah.
just get crushed like that. Like it's almost nothing.
I mean, they don't really have a strong bench. Um, Now their point guard Morris has been surprisingly bright light that they've had this season, even alongside Jamal Murray and Nikola
Right.
Jokic. But I mean, Will Barton hasn't played great this season. Neither has Gary Harris. I mean, he's had some good games. Paul Millsap's been okay, and it's just I don't. He the coach is doing something to get them to win to be
Hmm.
50-24 right now. I mean, they won 50 games, and so
I mean, they won
it's a
49 game.
testament to their
Yeah,
chemistry.
49 games
I mean,
last year.
right. So it's a testament to the chemistry. It's a testament to what they can get done. But I mean, they've also had some bad losses recently. They got crushed by the Pacers by 36 points, and that's without Victor. And another thing with Indiana, I thought they're going to drop out of playoff contention, or not out of playoff contention. I thought they're going to be a 7 or 8 seed without Victor, but they held the third
They're
seed for a
fifth
while.
right now. Yeah,
Yeah, they're tied for fourth right now
yeah.
with Boston, and so that was crazy to me how Victor Oladipo's
Nate
injury.
McMillan has to be top three in coach of the
Oh,
year.
most definitely. I don't care if they're fifth, but they lost their best player with people saying, "Oh, they're going to be seventh or eighth. They're going to drop really hard," and they stayed third for several weeks.
Yeah,
And so it's a testament. It's a testament to Nick McMillan and what he's been able to do with this team. It's a testament to the players who have stepped up, and Bogdanovich and Young and Turner and Sabonis off the bench has just been absolutely crazy. And uh, it's been really fun to see Sabonis really step out of his game uh, and become a known player around the league, even as a sixth man. And Tyreek Evans coming out and trying to play well and to take over that role as Victor Oladipo left that huge, huge void. Um, in the end, do I think it'll matter? No, but um, I think they've done an incredible job this season, especially without Victor Oladipo.
yeah. And it's interesting because with OK, before we move on, with OKC, this for most of the year, I mean, this is been known as a gritty team, and
Mm,
their forced turnover rate and hustling back on transition has dropped like drastically. Um,
yeah.
even though they're still top 10 in defense. So in terms of like what you see this OKC's like postseason journey being, do you still like foresee a first round exit?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Um, Especially if they face Golden State, they just don't have the caliber to go head to head against a deep Golden State team.
Let's say
I
they
know
face
with
Denver.
I think it'd be interesting. I
Yeah.
don't. I still think they will go out
Mhm.
in six. I think I would call it in 6 games. Um, I mean, with their defensive efficiency, but they need a passion again, and they need to get hustle again. And if anything in these past 10 games are telling, I mean, I mean, sure they beat the Pacers, but they lost to the Grizzlies, and sure they beat the Raptors, but they also lost to the Heat. They got crushed by the Warriors. They lost to the Pacers again.
Yeah.
Um, Lost to the Clippers, and so they've been up and down. Like they don't have a consistent playing field. They play
Hmm.
well against some good teams, and then they get crushed by that same good team, and then they play well against another good team, and then crushed by a bad team, and so they've got to. It's a bad time to have to try to find yourself. Um, but they've got to do it, and they've got to do it now if they want to have a chance in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Transitioning to Portland,
Mm.
last Monday night, Nurkic had a season-ending injury,
Oh my
a
goodness,
compound
yeah.
fracture to his left tibia and fibula, and the second overtime against the Nets. Just it went viral, but just something just very brutal to watch.
Oh yeah,
Almost
of course.
just like how Gordon Hayward's injury was last year, like just something you didn't want to watch over and over again. And he was averaging 15.6 points per game and had a 51
Mm.
effective field goal percentage. Career high numbers, averaging 10.4 rebounds and 3.2 assists. and
Right.
their net rating dropped from 10.4 to minus 5.0 when he wasn't on the floor. And with this Blazers team, obviously, I mean, they picked up Canner, but he's not the same way to force
Not at
Nurkic
all.
is.
He's
Yeah,
yeah.
and last year they had the stunning sweep by the Pelicans, and now I believe they're currently third in the West. And in terms of obviously like a devastating injury to Nurkic, and also like what do you like because there's always been the stigma of do we keep this backcourt together with Damon McCollum, or do we just break it
Mm-hmm.
up and build around one instead of both. But in terms of the injury and also realistic expectations for postseason expectations for this team, what are your thoughts?
Uh, it's such a heartbreaker to see that. I mean,
Yeah,
I think the reason that why they haven't really been able to do anything is because they haven't really had a consistent big man, and they had that finally.
yeah,
Nurkic was a top tier defender and a top tier talent around, especially um, around their offensive rebounding, and with all the stats that suggest that Nurkic was a huge factor in that. And um, even having Cantor, I mean, there Cantor is terrible. I mean, even with Nurkic, Portland had the worst defensive rating since the break among West playoff teams. Um, and so even with Nurkic gone, Enes Kanter hasn't come in, and with Portland, and Kanter's 299 minutes of play, Portland has a net rating of minus 5.8, and that's it's terrible. And
yeah.
Kanter, he's almost notably known as his infamous liability on defense. Um, and Portland's defensive rating rises from 106.7 to 110.7 when he's out on the court. And so, and an already and a team with already the worst defensive rating in the West since the All-Star break, you now lose Nurkic and put a infamously liable defensive player in Enes Kanter on the floor. Um, and it's so sad to see. I mean, Portland. I mean, if they're tied right now for third with Houston, so if they lose that lead, then they have to play Utah
That
with
would be
Rudy
a very
Gobert and
interesting
Donovan
matchup.
Mitchell. I think Utah would pull that out just because
Yeah,
Gobert is going to have his field day.
yeah, absolutely.
And even with the backcourt of Dame, I love the idea of keeping them together. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the backcourt. Backcourt. It's been everything wrong with the front court and the lack of bench that they've had.
Mhm.
Um, but
Like,
even
would you still have given Utah the edge if Nurkic was there?
no,
Yeah,
um, uh, even as a three seed, they would have. I think they would have pulled out victor with Clippers, and I still think they will if they keep that three seed. So I think that's their hope right now. Just keep the three seed, and I think they still will, but they're not going to get past the second round.
yeah.
You'll have to face even with the Nuggets team, but the Nuggets. I mean, the thing is they have those two teams with
The Nuggets won't have the Nuggets will keep home court advantage if they're the two seed
right,
until the Western Conference Finals,
right.
presumably.
But the thing with Utah and Denver is that they have big men.
Hmm.
And when you have such volatile big men, even as a defense, so let's go with Utah. You have Rudy Gobert, who's a good offensive player, but an incredibly great defensive player, facing incredibly terrible defensive player in Enes Kanter and a mediocre offensive player in Enes Kanter. And then you go with Nikola Jokic, who is an incredibly great offensive talent against a terrible defensive player. I mean, either way you go, you have an extremely big mismatch in the front court. Not to mention the shooting of Jamal Murray for the Nuggets, and not to mention Donovan Mitchell and Ingles on Utah. So you've got this huge void that Cantor has to fill with Nurkic out, and I think if Nurkic in, they win either series. But now it's very. I think they need a wish for the three seeds so they can get by the Clippers. But even then, I don't think there's a point. I think they're going to lose either way, and it's very sad to see somebody as up and coming as Nurkic get injured like that, and such a horrific injury and such a heartbreaking injury to such a good young guy. And I mean, again, yeah, it's heartbreaking, and it
Right.
stinks that it has to be now. Um, Especially just how well they've done this season. Uh, but they don't have a good player to fill the void, and and Enes Kanter just can't do that. Now, if he somehow breaks out of his terrible defensive phase, I mean, just the same thing as James Harden has done this year,
Exactly.
with he's actually playing good defense, and it's not that he's just playing defense; he's playing good defense this year,
Hmm.
and but I don't think Cantor can just turn that on a dime, especially after just what happened. And it's heartbreaking for Portland, and I feel for Portland. I feel for Damian Lillard as I've been a fan of his for a long, long time. Fan of CJ McCollum's as well, and it's heartbreaking to see that organization what they're having to go through right now, especially at this point of the season.
So if you were the GM and they do have a second round exit, you would still keep the backcourt together.
Of course, I mean, with the backcourts in the league, I mean, you've got Steph and Clay. Um, but with Dame and CJ, I mean, you have two good star players, and there's no reason you didn't break them up. And they have first of all, they have a great chemistry. They play well together, as most stars really can't do together, with the exception of like a Clay and Steph. Um, but there's nothing wrong with the backcourt.
Yeah.
There's everything wrong with everything else. Everything else is wrong, and what they have failed to do up until Nurkic is put somebody that they can take the pressure off of the backcourt with, and put some people on the bench to be solid role players, and that's what I think the organization has failed to do for these guys who love that city and won't leave that city to save their lives. I mean, a couple years back with all the debates of Damian Lillard leaving, and he's dedicated to that city, and I admire him for that he wants to stay there, and not a lot, especially in this NBA, everybody leaves to go to a championship caliber team. Um, uh, there's nothing wrong with the backcourt, but the organization has not helped them in any sense, with the exception of Nurkic this season. They have not helped them, and that's on them, not on the front court or not on the backcourt. And there's no reason you should split them up. You just need to do a better job of putting pieces around them.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that is definitely going to be interesting development because Nurkic is that is everything Cancer is not in terms of a matchup. If
Absolutely.
they had to face if they had to face Utah and him not being that two-way force. Transitioning to the East, I believe Boston's currently in the fourth seed and Indiana the fifth,
Right.
and for the entire season, Boston has kind of been up and down. They've had bright spots in terms of their them demolishing Golden State
Right.
a few weeks ago, and Hayward having 30 points off the bench. And now, like you're saying with the Pacers, them still being a fifth seed, not in the bottom tier of the East, seventh or eighth. But presumably, this will be the first round matchup. It just the only thing to determine now is who gets home court advantage. But in a series like this, where Indiana can definitely push Boston defensively, and Boston, it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of flip the switch in the postseason because they have at times had bright spots, but also it has been a bigger struggle to mesh the talent. How do you see a series like that playing out?
Um, it's so difficult for me to decide this because I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the season who I chose to win the Eastern Conference. I chose the Celtics to win the Eastern Conference.
Right.
And I've stuck by that even through the struggles, but because I thought they'll get out of it. I mean, Brad Stevens. I've praised Brad Stevens ever since he got into the league. I loved him at Butler, but I praised him, and I praised his team as a team now that has experience and now has their stars, and I just kept wondering, oh, they'll get out. I just kept thinking to myself, they'll get out of this. They'll get out of this funk that they're in, but they never really did.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're fourth, but they've been so questionable. Like, why is this happening to this team, and why aren't they excelling with the talent that they have? Because they have amazing talent, and now you have experience with that talent, and you're doing worse than you did last year. And so it's kind of weird. I don't know exactly what to make of it. But I'm still choosing to stick beside my pick in Boston. I think now coming into the playoffs, okay, they've been here before with this team. Sure, the season was a little rocky, but now, okay, it's playoff time. And
Hmm.
I'm still going to hold Brad Stevens in high regard as I always have. And as he's one of the top three coaches in the league right now, to me, still, even with a rocky season like this. And Kyrie's been here before. I mean, and now these young players such as Terry Rozier and Morris and Smart, they've been here before now. And with Hayward finally, I mean, finally coming to something. I mean, he was so inconsistent on the year, and I get it. He's got to come back from a terrible injury. Um, but I guess my expectation of him was that he would come back better than he has been. Um, but if he can consistently contribute off the bench like he did against the Warriors
Yeah, he's the X
in the
factor.
playoffs, now you have now you have a superstar on your second team. It's like having Ginobili on your team.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Now, so when you put your second five in, you don't have to worry. Okay, can somebody handle this? Because now you got Gordon Hayward. That's why, and I mean, I'm a Spurs fan. That's why we've
Hmm.
been able to be successful. It's because we've had a Hall of Fame talent on our second tier team on our second five. So now we have somebody there that is leading the team, and I think if Gordon Hayward can, um, they go even deeper in the playoffs. But I still choose them over Indiana. I think it can be an exciting series. We'll see if Sabonis can keep it up. We'll see if Indiana can keep shocking people and win some games. But I think ultimately, and the level of talent on the Celtics team, and now with the experience and the coaching pedigree of Brad Stevens, I think they will pull off that win, and I think they can even go to the conference finals. Well, I still want to choose them to win the conference, but uh, I don't think it's possible with how well Milwaukee and Toronto has done this season.
So in terms of the East power, like the East, like do you still feel as though it's kind of like Milwaukee and Toronto in terms of who has the best chance like to win the East this year?
Yes. Now Philadelphia, I mean, with the addition of Tobias Harris,
Hmm.
they have a great starting five. But you also got rid of some perimeter shooting that you desperately need, because really nobody else can except JJ and sometimes Tobias Harris. Everybody else is really inconsistent, even Jimmy Butler. But with their bench, they don't really have a bench. But what I've seen with Milwaukee is um, it's something to behold. I mean, MVP candidate Giannis, and with the finally breakout performance of oh, I just forgot his name,
Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton and
Yeah.
Malcolm Brogdon coming in to play, and with the additions of Nikola Mirotic, and so they've got, not only do they have a great starting five, but then now they've got some role player pieces who are starters on other teams coming in, and now they can lead that second team and have gelled well into the system, and it's scary. I mean, they've won 58 games this season so far. Toronto's won 55. Um, I think I'll choose um, Milwaukee in the East, despite Kawhi's legendary talent and the Kyle Lowry and the team that he has around him, because of Giannis and how he's actually getting better at his 3 point shooting. Like everybody, everybody in the league, the media, the sportscasters, commentators, everybody says that if Giannis can hit threes, nobody can stop him, and that is so true.
Yeah.
Nobody will be able to stop Giannis if he can hit threes, and he's starting to hit threes, and it's kind of scary. But you you don't need Giannis to hit threes. That's the thing. You don't need Giannis to hit threes because you've got Brogdon, you've got Middleton, you've got Mirotic, you've got guys who can hit around him. Um, with his freakish ability, he can guard anybody on the floor, um, and play offense against anybody on the floor. So I think it's a scary thing to watch. And even with their inexperience, I think the Bucks will pull it out. But I think it's Bucks and Toronto to be in the finals. And I would,
And
even
do,
with
like, do you
even
see
with
that being kind
76ers.
of like a because Savon felt as though like that's an automatic 7 game series if it's Bucks Raptors.
Oh man, I mean,
Do you foresee that like a six
I,
seven
w-
game
I
series?
yeah, 6-7.
Yeah.
Um, if one of those teams wins in five or less, I'd say, good grief, Golden State, watch out.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
Because those are the two best teams in the league, the two best records in the league. Um, consistently all year they've been the two best teams, and if one of them can win 4 out of 5 games against one of the two best teams, Golden State better watch out. And if that happens, I might even put them as a front runner to win in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that would be an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
So in the West, you still feel as though Houston is kind of like the biggest threat to
I
Golden
mean,
State.
yeah, I, I, I mean, all year I've said that Giannis is the MVP. Giannis is the MVP, but I'm changing my mind. James Harden should win
Wow,
the
really?
MVP. My goodness,
Wow.
he's with the entry of Chris Paul. James Harden has single-handedly carried his team to a 3 seed, or 4 seed now, but tied to the 3 seed. James Harden, with that historic stretch of offense that he had this season, with the 40-point games consecutive, and even the 30 points longer than that. Um, I mean, what he's been able to do with with the talent or lack thereof around him, with inconsistencies and injuries and a player performance on the team, is
Hmm.
James Harden. I mean, if we're going strictly by the book, um, James Harden is the most valuable player in the NBA. And now,
Yeah.
I think if the Bucks didn't have Giannis, would they be a 1 seed? Absolutely not. They'd probably be a 5 or 6. But the Rockets would be out of the playoffs without James Harden. I strongly believe that. Even with the Chris Paul and Clint Capella, as those are the other two best players. PJ Tucker has been so iffy this year. Eric Gordon has been iffy this year. But James Harden has been such a consistent player, and now he's not just a one-way player. He's a he's getting to be a good defensive player, and that's what I've seen. He has progressed into an all-around talent this year. Finally, now he still has his defensive lapses, sure,
Hmm.
but James Harden deserves the MVP. I mean,
Yeah.
when he won the MVP last year, or was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last year.
And when
He's
LeBron was
done better
second.
this season. He
Wow.
has had an overall better season than his MVP year.
And that was thought of as an unfathomable in terms of what he was doing last year. That he
Right,
could outdo that type of output.
right. And to me, last year, I didn't think he really deserved it just because he was only a one-way player. But now he's not,
Now he's become a
and he's
very good
doing
post
better.
defender. Yeah.
Yes, he's doing better in offense, which I didn't think was possible, and he's doing way better on defense. So if Giannis gets it, props to Giannis. I don't think it'll be a loss in any way. I think Giannis deserves it as well, but James Harden deserves more that MVP, and he is singularly handily carrying in a tough Western Conference, and he to be able to be said that you are still the biggest threat to the Warriors as as James Harden has been able to carry this team. It's a testament to what James Harden has been able to do. And before this season, I didn't really respect James Harden. I admired his offensive prowess, but I thought that defensive inefficiency was something to be laughed at.
Yeah.
And man, he has totally changed my mind. All season, I've been saying Giannis should be MVP. But looking back and studying the game and just wowing over the performances he has and admiring how much he's worked on defense. I mean, he deserves it. And
Mike, I'm absolutely stunned. Absolutely stunned right
you
now.
should be. You should be. Because I've been telling you all season, the last 2 times we've done the podcast, I've been saying, yo, it should be Giannis.
Yeah.
But James Harden should be the MVP this year. And I don't think it'd be a shame for Giannis to win because, I mean, he's
Hmm.
had some amazing strides this year. But I think it's a disservice to James Harden if he doesn't win this year. Because
Yeah,
he's done
definitely.
better than his last year as MVP.
Yeah, and that's the crowning achievement, him being able to outdo last year's
Yeah.
output. Mike, it has been a pleasure as always. We're finally able to do it, but thanks for being back on.
I thank you, man. I look forward to the next time.
Yeah, definitely. That wraps it up for tonight. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, and not along with my my counterpart, J.R. Morris. But this has been Full Scope. See you later.